externally and at work. It's really amazing that the community is just like gathering on this event and supporting the event. So I really appreciate that. So the topic of my presentation is UI testing using Easy Repro and QAWolf. So Easy Repro is something a lot of people in the Dynamics ecosystem might have heard, but QAWolf is something that even I was not aware till like 2 months ago. So I'm not an expert, or I'm also a beginner in QAWolf. So I just want to present like two different options, because Easy Repro is sort of the go-to option when people want to do UA testing. So I just thought, okay, we have Easy Repro on one side, and then we have Puppeteer, like that was released by Google maybe a couple of years ago. So that was sort of the competitor, but Easy Repro is like more made for Dynamics, because it has got a lot of helpers to uh, like you don't need to think about the selectors or wait for a navigation event, or it's sort of all that complexity is abstracted away for you. So and Puppeteer was released by Google, and along the same lines, Puppeteer, um, uh, the core team that worked on Puppeteer, they actually started working on this new product called Playwright. That is a Microsoft open source tool which does UI testing as well. And what QAWolf is based on Puppeteer. So it's sort of like three levels. So QAWolf is based on Playwright. So we had Puppeteer in the very beginning, and then Puppeteer sort of spun off into Playwright, and then Playwright is used by QAWolf. So it's sort of based on the same kind of technology underneath. So in terms of the suitability of which one should you use, or which is sort of more easy to get started, I don't know whether there is a way to quickly put some polls in here. Maybe I'll just start typing it up. Like if you're using UI testing at the moment, I'm just gonna put C# here. So if you like to write test using C#, you can like this one. Otherwise, I'm just gonna put another option, TypeScript. So which one do you actually feel more comfortable when you actually do UI testing, or when you actually want to write some code? So if you can, I'll give probably like maybe 30 seconds to kind of get an understanding of where exactly should I focus. Should I just focus more on Easy Repro because it's sort of like established, or whether I should just explore a bit more on the TypeScript and QAWolf side of things. Okay. All right, give it another 10 seconds. So I think so far I see probably yes. Okay. So based on what I see so far, like Easy Repro is sort of where I will focus. Okay, I'll show both anyway. So I'll go to the slide. So what is Easy Repro? Okay, so I just gave a high level summary of Easy Repro's QAWolf, and this is sort of like the comparison, a quick comparison of Easy Repro and QAWolf. Easy Repro is based on Selenium, like if you just try to separate it out, and QAWolf based on Playwright, which itself was like spun off from Puppeteer. So Puppeteer has got like a really big user base in the front-end dev space. So a lot of people who do UI testing in front-end dev use Puppeteer, and Playwright and QAWolf are something quite recent. So but it's really exciting, like the way I think the critical difference, especially for me, is the way authentication is handled, because the first step, like you wanted a lot of people when they start UI testing, the very first roadblock that you get is how do you authenticate into my Dynamics instance, because you need to enter the username and password, you need to know the selectors for it, and then if you have multi-factor authentication, how do you sort of handle the multi-factor authentication? So that is sort of the first roadblock. And based on what I have experimented with so far, Easy Repro is much more cleaner in terms of because it's been around for a while. It's been around for more than 2-3 years, so it's got a lot of these helpers and um, config settings to kind of help you do that. But QAWolf has got a really cool way of authenticating, which I will show you, without any sort of username and password, just using the session state or cookies. And the biggest drawback for me in Easy Repro is there is no recorder. So I think there might be some experimental, but I don't think there is any sort of extension that goes on your browser that can help you record the steps and then it generates a code. There's no such thing like that in Easy Repro. You can write it in C sharp, you have IntelliSense. So basically, just like any library, you install Easy Repro and then you basically try to put dot, see what are all the methods available. So then that's how you sort of go about writing your test. But that is sort of cumbersome sometimes. It would be really easy to have some extension that is on the browser, or something that can automatically generate the code for you. So for me, that is this authentication is different, how QAWolf handles authentication and how Easy Repro. And second one is the recorder. And the underlying technology, one is like Easy Repro Selenium WebDriver, and QAWolf is based on Playwright. And in terms of language, C sharp, if you want to write C sharp, you basically look at Easy Repro, because that's something will be easier to write test on if you don't want to touch TypeScript, because the learning curve on TypeScript is quite steep. Because you need to know just TypeScript, compile it. So that if you don't want to go that path, you can stick with the established one, Easy Repro. And so the first, I talked about the two challenges. So the first challenge is always authentication. How do you sort of authenticate? Second challenge is, if you have this username and password stored somewhere and you want to check it into your source control, you don't want to check in a plain text password. So that is the second challenge. I can probably put in my username and password in some config file, but I don't want the config file to go into inside source control so that people can see what the password is. And third one is, if you have the test in source control, how do I use these tests as a part of ALM pipeline and then run all these tests automatically when people check in code, or so that you don't need to run this test manually on your machine. So that is sort of the three fundamental challenges. Once you tackle these three, once you kind of understand how to do these three, then the rest is more about understanding the framework, right? Because then you have the documentation of I want to click this row on the grid. You can basically Google that on the frame, that's not a big deal. But once you need to tackle these three challenges, and then it's a lot easier. So I will focus more on these three steps. So the very first step, Easy Repro. So how do you create a Easy Repro project? So to begin with, you need to create a unit test project. So that is a normal C# unit test project. So you'd go in here and then you just click new and then project. And then if you search for it, there should be, I think if everyone knows where it, okay, unit test. So if I just search for test, the machine is a bit slow for some reason. Unit test. Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because it's sort of frozen. So anyway, so let me just, I will not, because I had a blue screen like half an hour ago. So bit worried that it something is happening. Okay, let me just go into the slides because it seems it's frozen. Okay, so I won't go in here because it seems to be okay. It's searching. I'll just try to do this safe way because I don't want another blue screen. So that's the first step. Create a unit test project. Second step, you need to so this was actually a bit confusing for me as well, because when you actually search for the when you actually search for the package to add for Easy Repro, the package is not called Easy Repro. It's called dynamics365.ui.automation.api. So that is the project you need to add. If you search for Easy Repro, you might find these two. One is Power Apps and another is Dynamics 365. You need to add this project, Dynamics 365 UI automation. So that is the second. And then this is actually the third one, like, since Easy Repro is based on Selenium, Selenium is basically a protocol that can talk to various browsers. So each browser vendor has their own sort of driver for Selenium. So if you want to run the test on Chrome, you need to install this Selenium WebDriver.chrome driver. And if you want to run it on Firefox, you need to install this Gecko driver. So this is because if you install the Nuget package, the advantage of installing a Nuget package rather than downloading an driver and checking it into source control is the Nuget package will be restored on the DevOps pipeline. So you don't need to store this driver on your source control, which might go out of date. Maybe 6 months down the line, the driver might not be even like relevant anymore. So if you have it as a Nuget package, it's always going to be like installed from the it's also always going to be installed from Nuget. So that way you don't need to worry about like putting exes or anything, and that is a good. So you need to install uh, two packages. One is this Dynamics 365 UI automation API. Second is Chrome driver if you want to run your test on Chrome. Otherwise, I think if you want to run it in Firefox or Edge, there are drivers for that as well. So find the right drivers and install it. And now I just have some. So once I do that, right, I need to configure some run settings. So if you develop a XC, right, in the XC, you would have added a app.config. So in that app.config, you would have some sort of common settings that you want, like maybe like the URL, username, password, or something. But in this scenario, I am approaching this from a perspective of ALM. So if you are going to check this project into source control and you have a DevOps pipeline or a GitHub Actions, you need to kind of store that settings locally, but you should have the same sort of settings somewhere, like that is like encrypted. So in the run settings file, right, basically I have my username, I have my password, I have the URL, and then I have a key for the multi-factor authentication on this file called run settings. So if you actually search for this, just close this one. If you actually search for the run settings file schema, you would easily find the run settings schema. So after you create your Easy Repro project, create this file called run settings, and then in the test, you need to configure run settings, and then you select auto. You can tick this box as auto detect run settings files, and then you can select solution by run settings file and select this file that you have created. So after you created that, all the username password, I'm not going to expand this because it's got the username password on this thing. So test run parameters. So it's basically a name value pair. So if you expand this test run parameters, you can put in all your configuration on the test run parameters node. So put in your username, put in the password, put in the if you have multi-factor authentication, you need to put in the key. So let me just search for. I don't remember exactly. So if you set up multi-factor auth and then dynamic Office 365, there is a page where like basically when you set up multi-factor authentication, it will Office 365 authenticator app. So if you set up here, need to set up a multi-factor authentication. Yeah, so this one, right? So when you set up a multi-factor authentication app, you would get like this kind of like, you'll get like a configure mobile app, right? You have the barcode. You have a barcode here, and then that is a barcode you'll be the QR code you'll be scanning on your mobile on your authenticator app to get the sort of like the generation key or something like that. So the important bit here is there is this link that says configure app without notifications, right? If you click on that, you would get a numeric, you will get like some sort of key. You need that key for the multi-factor authentication. So that is the bit. If you don't have multi-factor authentication, you don't need to worry about that, because you just put in your username and password, then you're done with it. But if you have two-factor, then you need to actually grab that. You need to set up this whole two-factor authentication on Office 365, and then you click this link that says configure app without notifications. You get a code, and you need to store that code on your test and parameters, because that will be used by your test. So here in this, so I have a quick test. So on the initialize part, what I'm actually grabbing the username, grabbing the password, URL, all from that app settings, all from that run settings area. So this environment variable, I'm actually adding this environment variable because I'm going to run this on GitHub Actions as well. So I'm just first checking whether there's an environment variable called Power Apps username. If there is nothing, then try to grab it from the test context properties. So it's basically like yeah. So I'm just coalescing. So my first priority is my first preference is environment variable. If I don't have it, I'm going to grab it from the app settings. So I grab the username, password, URL, and this is the bit I said MFA token. That is MFA token you need if you have two-factor authentication configured. And then afterwards, you need to set this one. I had some issue. You need to set this UCI test mode to false. And then for me, I just set it up as Chrome. So if you look at my Nuget packages, if you check my Nuget packages, I just have installed. Where is it? Manage Nuget packages here. All right. So if I have I have installed the automation API, test adapter test framework. And then I have installed like Chrome and like Firefox, everything. But this is because if I say that the browser type is Chrome, I need to have the Chrome driver installed. I need to have that installed so that I can run the test. And then this class initialized, right? It's running before all the tests. So I need to create this XRM app object, and then you need to log in using the log in into this URL using the username and password and multi-factor authentication. You're done with this once, and afterwards it's all the test. After you do that, everything is through this XRM app. So if you want to sort of figure out what do I need to do, like in Dynamics, maybe I should go to a sub area, maybe I should click this ribbon button, maybe I should click on some row on the view. You just, once you have this XRM app object, everything is like available from the XRM app object. So I have two tests on this. So one is just I'm just saying I'm going to open the service area, and I'm going to open the accounts entity. I'm going to check the number of account rows should be greater than 0. Another one is just like I open up a form. I'm going to set the first name and last name. It's all contrived test. So that's just like probably not going to be like but just want to show how to kind of do that. So in terms of like performing some operations, like running some UI test on Dynamics, you have one way, right? You do XRM app, and you try to figure out whether, okay, is there a navigation, is there a quick, like whatever it is, like so if I say XRM app, dot, so see, I have like, okay, BPF, command bar, command, like you have so many things. You need to kind of figure out what is the thing that I want to do. I need to quick create. So you need to do some searching. That is one way, right? Then you're relying on Easy Repro to have the functionality that you need. Another option is you can do this execute script. So if you go to the web client, so you already have, when you create it, right, you have this web client. So that is on the class level. On the web client, on the browser, you can basically execute an arbitrary script that is going to be run on the context of the window. So that is another way you can approach it. Like, you can use all the methods and functions created by Easy Repro team to do whatever you want to do. And second is, you can, if you know the JavaScript, because you don't, if you think about it, every area in Dynamics or Power Apps, you can you have some sort of client API on it. You want to navigate to a record, you want to maybe clicking a ribbon button, that's something that is not there. But most of the time, like, you have XRM web API. You can trigger some functions, like, you can set the fields, you can collect the fields, you can save and close. Everything is, most of the functions are available. So you have two options. You can do this, like, based on whatever Easy Repro team has created for you, or you can use this execute script to run some JavaScript against the page. So both of them will work. So right now I can just show whether this is gonna. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna say test. Okay, I have test explorer here, and then I'm gonna run this test. Okay, I'm gonna say, let's say, okay, let me just do debug. If I do debug, it should open up the browser and do whatever it's supposed to do. So in the meantime, I will actually show you the other part of it. So the other part of it is how do you set up a CI/CD pipeline for this? So what I have done is, on this particular Power Apps demo, I have done GitHub Actions. So since I actually want, like, I'm mostly on, like, all the open source projects, I have it on GitHub. So this is more of like something that I'm getting more comfortable than Azure DevOps. So GitHub's Actions is similar to Azure DevOps. Uh, Basically, you have the same kind of YAML file, and you have a series of steps on the YAML file, and then all these steps will be run on when you commit the code to your repository. So you can, if this works on the GitHub Actions, the same thing is going to work on Azure DevOps as well. So I am going to check it run. Oh yeah, see it actually. Okay, where am I? Is it running? I don't know where is it running, but I think it's just like frozen. Okay, must be doing something. Okay, so I'll go back. I just go back into GitHub Actions. So I'll just explain this GitHub Actions what I have. So first step, you always need to restore the Nuget packages on the solution. Okay. Oh, see. Now it is okay. I will wait for this thing to run, and I will show you. This will give you an idea of what is happening. So this is the test that is running, automatically filling the username. It's automatically filling the password. I have two-factor authentication set up. It knows what the code is because I put in the code. It's gonna go past that screen. It doesn't care about this. It does automatically click everything. And then what this is supposed to do is supposed to, let's just check the test. Okay, I'll just let it run. But you get the idea. So I think once we are now past the authentication screen, now basically you can do whatever, like, that is the biggest challenge always. Like, how do I authenticate? How do I not have this password on the Azure DevOps or the CI/CD pipeline, but I still want to run the test as a part of, like, the pipeline. So if we go here, should be test explorer. Let's see what test it is running. Okay, it's running this open account grid. Still waiting for, I think it's got all the element weight thing set up. So I'll just let it run, but you get this idea. I will just come back once this is finished running, and it will show. Okay, so I'll go back into the GitHub action. Sorry for just jumping back and forth, but I think I don't want to spend, I don't want people to just, like, spend waiting, looking at the spinning wheel or anything. So first step, you need to restore the Nuget packages. Second step, you have this is a so with GitHub Actions, you have like you have sort of like the steps. So you actually will add the steps. So this is an action that helps you to do the Nuget restore. So I do this Nuget restore on a second step. So Nuget restore, and then I'm going to use this action called setup ms build. And once I have setup ms build setup, so you see a pattern here, right? You use this step called setup Nuget. On the very next line, you have the Nuget restore. You actually use this action called setup ms build, then you run the ms build. So I'm going to run this ms build rebuild. I'm going to run it on a 64-bit platform, because if you don't put this, it is going to have some issues trying to figure out where the assemblies are. I had some issues for running the VS test. So this VS test console.exe, it has some issues for us. I couldn't figure it out. At least if you build the test assembly as any CPU, that is the default setting. So the default setting will be any CPU. If you build it as any CPU, then it has some issues trying to. So I built it as 64-bit. So I'm just saying it's a 64-bit platform. So I'm going to pick up the assembly from bin x64 debug, and then in this part, I'm going to run the test using vs test console.exe. I'm going to say ecrepro.dll, and I just want all the logs to console. Platform is 64. These are all command line arguments. So if you Google for vs test console.exe, how to run test on vs test console.exe, you will find this information. And you also need to mention the framework, because if you don't mention the framework, it is going to try to target 4.5, but you don't want it to target 4.5. You want to target, because the build version on this Repro is 4.6.2. So since you have a different by default, it will try to target 4.5. So you need to mention the framework version 4.6.2. So once you run this, so you have all the setup. So every time you build and commit, it's going to run. So I will show something that I have already run before. So this is basically every time you commit, it's gonna run, and it's gonna, there's no artifacts in this one, but yeah, it's basically running all the tests. If I expand the test, it's gonna tell you what are all, like, it ran 2 tests, both the tests passed. So that's how it is done. And then if I go now into test explorer, see, it has finished running. So it did, like, it was able to open up the whichever the accounts account sub area, number of rows on the accounts, and then, like, so both the tests pass. So this is sort of how you do the EC Repro side. C#. Most likely, if you are using EC Repro, maybe you are going to be using it along with Azure DevOps as well. I just demoed GitHub Actions because it's fairly new and there is not much content around GitHub Actions, but the method will be very similar. You would oh, and I forgot before I forget, the key part of this is if I go into my actions, right? So the part I didn't show you how is, I don't have the test settings here, but it was able to connect, and it was able to connect to the URL and password and everything. So there is a difference on how I did that in here. So what I have done is, so these 3 parts, right? This is something that for GitHub Actions, you have the capability for environment variables. So that's why if you actually check here, I am actually trying to retrieve the username using the environment variable first. Only then I try to go into the test context properties. The reason for that is I'm actually setting up the environment variables here. So I'm setting up the app URL, plain text. I don't need to hide that, but I have the username and password and the token. These are all set up as secrets in GitHub. So if I go into settings, and if I go into secrets, I have set up I have set up these three in the GitHub secrets area, so they'll all be encrypted. So you can't really see the output on the. If you check the actions, in the actions, it will show you all the environment variables that are used. But if you have some secret set up, it won't even show what the value for the secret is. So if I run the test here, there's this step, right? If I expand this, so you can see it was using the app URL, but all this is all like, it's all hidden. So that's how you run it in GitHub Actions. Like, it's slightly different. You need to use environment variables. That is the key thing here, because in GitHub, it's easier to do it through environment variables. So if you are going to use EC Repro and if you're going to use GitHub Actions, like, this is far easier. If you are using Azure DevOps, there might be a different way to do that, but the key thing is you should not store a plain text username, password, or multi-factor key on your repo. It should be stored somewhere in a secure area, and then you can add the UA test as a part of the DevOps pipeline, and then you can just probably, like, deploy the assemblies only if the test pass. So that's something that you can add to your pipeline. So that is the easy repro bit. Are there any questions about it, or we can go on the very end and ask in one session? So it's like half time now, almost 7:30. Should I just continue, or? Hello?
Hello there, Natraj. Yes, I believe you should just continue. There was one
Okay.
question related to RSA and Easy Repro, but I think we should leave the questions till the end.
All right, cool. Okay, so I'll just continue.
Thanks again.
Thanks. All right, so that was Easy Repro. So what we saw was, so I want to reiterate, run settings. Run settings is where you'll put your the app settings, sort of like, if the URL, username, password, any other things that you need, put that in on the run settings. The run settings file, you don't check it into source control. Put it in your local, like, if you have password, username, password, don't put it in source control. Just keep it like yeah, just keep it local, and then configure the username, password in some secret area on Azure DevOps or GitHub. And then I showed how to do the GitHub workflow. And then XRM app is execute script. When do you if you don't have something defined in XRM app, then you can basically, if you know how to do that in the client API, use execute script. So that's how we do Easy Repro. Second one, QAWolf. So QAWolf is something that is, I think I actually knew about this around like 4 months back, and it's fairly exciting. It's a fairly exciting new tool that is a open source tool based on Playwright, which is a Microsoft product. And the key difference is you write your test in JavaScript or TypeScript compared to C#. So if you're more comfortable writing TypeScript code, this is something that you can look into. There is nothing specific, like, QAWolf is just like Puppeteer. There is nothing specific about there's no sort of like layer or like additional tooling on top of QAWolf for Power Apps or Dynamics at this stage. So everything you'll be doing, you are basically going to be doing on your own, not because there is no library to kind of like Easy Repro. There's no layer on top to kind of make it easy for you at this stage. But yeah, I just want to show the other side as well to kind of like, so that you can have like a good understanding of both the products. And so for QAWolf, QAWolf is the first thing you need Node. So you need Node, you need TypeScript. So if you are across Node, you need to install the packages, and the way you actually install packages is usually like npm install. So when you do Node development, everything is through yarn, or everything is through npm install. So let me just try to. So the very first step you need to do, you need to create an empty package.json, right? So how would you create a package.json? If you are across PCF development, it is pretty much the same. You do npm init, and then it will ask you a whole bunch of questions about what is a package name, what is this. So all that, fill in all that. At the end of this process, you will have a PCF, you will have the package.json. Okay. So that package.json is here. And this is a critical bit for, if you want to use TypeScript, this is the bit you need. You need the tsconfig.json. You need that on the same folder. If you don't have a tsconfig.json, when you install QAWolf, it is going to assume that you are going to write your test in in JavaScript. If you don't want that happening, you need to have a tsconfig.json here. So that is like a TypeScript configuration file. So I have a sample one set up in this one. It's just nothing fancy, just just a standard vanilla TypeScript config file. And then once you do that, this is sort of a generator for QAWolf. So you would install npm init and then QAWolf. Once you do that, it's going to start installing the packages, and then it's going to have some sort of generator like Yeoman. Yeah, like Yeoman. If you have used Yeoman in the past, it's something similar. It's sort of a templating tool they have. And then the cool thing about that is it is going to help you set up your CI/CD pipeline as well. So when it sets up this folder, it is going to set up your Azure DevOps YAML or GitHub Actions or Circle CI. I think these are Travis, maybe some major CI/CD vendors. So it is going to help you to create all those YAML files, and then you can go about and create your tests. So let me just wait for this to finish installing. Once it installs, let me just show. It's going to install in the background. Let me just show how it looks like. So some of the tests. So what I have written is some test here, the very first step, everything is just like in here, everything is based on XRM. XRM map is sort of the key piece on EC Repro. On QAWolf, the key piece will be like page. So page is like the primary object. Like you want to navigate something, you want to navigate to some URL, you want to grab some element, or you want to execute some JavaScript. Everything is done through page. So you don't need to remember. You didn't remember the sequence and everything, because I will show you once this one is done. It is going to template it out. So see, this is a template. It's going to ask you directly to create QAWolf. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, I want to keep it as QAWolf. And now you have the option. Now you want to, depending on what CI/CD pipeline you use, if you Azure DevOps, whatever it is, yeah, I can choose DevOps just for it, and it's going to automatically install all these packages on the background. It is going to create a sample test as well for you. So the key packages you need Jest is actually the test framework that you'll be using to write your test. And then Playwright is the Microsoft framework that helps you to automate the browser. QAWolf is built on top of Playwright. And then you have QAWolf. And because this is a TypeScript project, you would usually have all the types. So debug just node, okay, these are the standard ones. And Playwright itself has got the types on the package itself. So you don't need to install separate types for it, because it's already there on the package. And then because you're going to write your tests in TypeScript, you need this. It automatically installs this additional package called tstest, because you want to write your tests in TypeScript as well. So it is going to install it on the background. So what I have done is I have written 2 tests on this one. So I'm just saying, okay, I have created some sort of one page, like a really thin sort of like wrapper around QAWolf. So that I don't you don't need to see what kind of when I say Power Apps, I created this class called Power Apps Browser. And Power Apps Browser, I've created a helper method called like open form. But what exactly it is doing, Power Apps Browser itself, what it is doing when I say open form, um, open form. What is this doing is, what it is doing is, it is going to evaluate. Evaluate means you are going to run this script. So this is basically the Java, the JavaScript you are going to run in the context of the page, and then that is sort of like, and then once this is done, like it's gonna wait for the selector and like all that. But this is something that like, yeah, because we don't have any sort of wrapper or tooling around Playwright. This is how I sort of like prefer to write now, because all like, you want to go to a form, you want to set an attribute, everything is there is some XRM dot something for it. So once you know what the client API thing is, you can execute it. But and the cool thing is, like, if you have, because we have TypeScript, we have this community project called what is that called? I don't remember exactly. This is called types.xrm, I guess. Types.xrm. Types.xrm. Yeah, this one. This types. So this is typing for the XRM namespace. So anytime you just say XRM dot, like, you don't want to sort of like guess what is going to be there. So once you install it, you will have some all this useful information about you know intelligence. Basically intelligence. You need intelligence, and you need like type checking. Everything is available. So install that as well. So if I just check, still installing, but once it's installed, you also need to install this typing file for XRM. So after you install it, you write all your tests in TypeScript. But like you see, like I have just written some sort of wrapper for TypeScript. It's not a full-on thing. So if I just say open form, I'm going to say xrm.navigation. uh, I can run like XRM web API. I can just run straight away. So you need to know what, because everything. I think it's safe. It's safe to use the XRM client API to kind of like to do whatever you want to do, rather than only in some scenarios you want to use the selectors way. Because if you try to if I'm assuming that I'm on the account view, right, and I want to click the new button and I want to open up a new account form, then you need to figure out what exactly is a selector for the new button. And then you need to click that selector, and then that is going to open up the form. Then you need to wait for the DOM to load, or the navigation to stabilize, or like, the navigation is the requests are like, requests are like done, like, there is then you need to execute, then you need to do something. So rather than that, you can execute some client API scripts, if you know. But for some, you need to do the selectors. But yeah, most of the time it's better to do the client API. And so the key things on this one, I have the slide for this. So once you do this, right, once after this all is installed, I can just show, rather than just doing the uh, rather than doing like for dynamics, I'll just show you, like, the way you create test in QAWolf is npx QAWolf create URL and test name. So if I just go into this project, okay, so I'm just gonna run this one. So say npx. So after you install it, you just say QAWolf and then say howl. If this one is giving you an ASCII art, that means it's actually installed. So you get this one. So that's installed. Okay, so now we say npx QAWolf and then create. Now we need to put the, I'm just gonna say https google.com. I'm going to say Google. So this is the URL. This is the URL you're going to test, and this is the name of the test. I'm going to say Google. By default, if you don't specify any browser, it's going to use Chromium to record the test. So QAWolf is going to inject some selectors on the page, so it knows, so that it knows. Where is it? TypeScript, unable to node to fix it. I didn't have TypeScript installed, so I'm just gonna have to install TypeScript. Thing. So this one is gonna take some time. So what I will do is I'm just gonna jump here. I'm gonna write the same test in here. So QA wolf create. npx QA wolf create https.com and then Google. I'm just gonna say Google because this library is set up. I'm gonna just run it from here because I have all the things set up here. So see, as soon as you do that, you can see straight away it has created this file called google.test.cs. It has templated out all the. So that's why I told you you don't need to remember all these things because it's going to template it. It's going to template out all these things. So it is already going to jump into google.com. Once this Chromium opens, it should be. So you have this file called config. Okay, there's nothing. I have environment here. Headless is false. So I have a .env file here. .env file is a special file in Node that you can use to load like some environment variables. So that for example, QAWolf, it checks for all these environment variables. So QAW artifact path, headless, all these QAW prefix ones are so QAWolf one. So I'm just checking it's not headless. Okay, it's not headless. Okay, so Chromium is opened, right? It's now stuck. Now it's on Chromium. So now see, this is the difference. This is the key difference for me between QAWolf and Easy Repro. So I can actually say you have save and exit, or you can have you have the REPL. So once if you just want to author your test by just recording it, I can just say here, I'm just going to say test. I'm going to say Google search. So this is done. Maybe I'm going to do the speed test probably. So once I'm done, what I can do is, so I come back here and I just say save and exit. If I do save and exit, it's going to simply dump that. It's going to see, it's simply going to dump that content in the test. So you already have like the test. So if you run this test, it's going to do exactly the same. It's going to go into google.com, search for click this search, and then fill the value as test, and then it's going to click. So everything is sort of like hooked up based on the selectors. So if you want, this is the recording thing. This is something that you can use to record. And then so this is obviously for CRM, this is not going to be very easy to read because all these XPaths is all basically garbage. So that's why I think you need to kind of do this for CRM and then slightly tweak it. For example, this I'll show you what I have done for so the second part, right? So that is the first part, create, and this is the second part about authentication. If you see in EC Repro, the way EC Repro was doing authentication is it was using the actual username and password to actually log in. It had a login process, but QAWolf can basically bypass this whole login process by injecting the session state. So when you actually create a new test, you can say just like how I did for google.com, you can just go into your dynamics Power Apps page, and then you can just go into the login page, log in as normal, and then once you log in as normal, you can go into the REPL, and then you can just save the state. So basically what it will do is when you actually execute this await QAWolf.save state, it is going to dump the entire session state onto the file for the folder. So I have something like I have done that something in the past. So this is like a dump of all the cookies and all the like session storage, everything. You just dump the whole thing into this file. And once you have this whole thing dumped onto the file, you don't really need the username and password anymore. You just need the cookies. So basically, what I have done is, if I go into my env variables, you need only this. You only need this one cookie called crm underscore ovin underscore auth underscore cookie. You just only need that. So if you actually have configured these two as secrets, you don't really need a username and password, because the cookie is good enough to log in. Uh, Usually, you would when you actually do the when you actually um, do the authentication. When you want to do the authentication in QAWolf, they recommend in QAWolf, don't really just use this whole this. You can go by the whole username and password, find out the selector for username, find out the selector for password, then click on login, all that. But then you'll be stuck on the multi-factor authentication part. So if you actually do it like this, if you there is a authentication page on QAWolf. So if you, because I have only 5 minutes, it might be too hard to kind of explain this at the moment. If you actually go into docs.qwolf.com, there is this docs for handle sign-in. So all the details is on here. So what they tell you to do is exactly this. So when you actually load the state, once you save the state after logging in into the JSON, and then you can just set the state from a local file, and then once you do that, you'll be already logged in. So I can prove that by just if I just say test, right? You are not going to see the username and you're not going to see the username and password screen. It's going to just jump in straight into the login screen. And headless is false, so you should be able to see. Oh no, wait a minute. I'm just saying run headless. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into package.json, and I'm gonna see if I just say headless, I'm going to remove that so you can see that it's going to open up the browser. So if I just say test, okay, say test again. I have 5 more minutes or 3 more minutes, I guess. So I just want to show this just to kind of show another alternative of how you can log in without actually having a username and password. So I'm gonna run this. Oh, this is Google test. Okay, I'm gonna not run this. I'm gonna cancel this because I'm gonna remove this. Delete. I'm gonna run this again. I just want to run a specific test. So this, when I say npx QAWolf test, it's gonna run everything. So just want to run a specific test probably. So I'll just I think it's easier for me to delete the Google test. So now it's gonna run the Chromium. So it's not headless because you can see there is no headless flag. Now it should open up Chromium and start executing the test. So the test itself is it's not like so see here Chromium. Okay, it did login, but there is no login screen. See, now it's actually directly on the main page because you're just using the cookie. So you're able to actually bypass this whole. This is like a two-factor. This thing is protected by two-factor anyway, but you just basically overcome this whole thing because you have the cookie. Or you can even use the session state. But I use the cookie because I can store these two. I can store these two values on GitHub as secrets. This OV not cookie and OV not domain. So I can just store that in the GitHub secrets area. So I don't want to load the whole state. I just want to load the both the cookies. So what I have done is in this Power Apps browser help page, what I have done is I have basically injected the cookies when before the page loads. So see, now it's actually logging in and it's gonna run through this whole thing. So that's I think that's pretty much over time now. So I will just stop it there. You can find out more in the QAWolf. Um, if you just Google QAWolf, you'll find all the content. EC Repro is already like a GitHub open source project, so it's all there. And I am on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is like Raman. So if you have some questions, you can ask there as well. I have probably like maybe 3 minutes.
It's about
If there are any
done,
questions.
Natraj. Thank you so much for your session. So there's a few questions here. One of which is, what happens if the quick cookie expires, and is it likely to happen?
Yes, yeah, that is something I just created this cookie like maybe like 3 weeks back. Still not expired, so it might eventually expire at some time. But in that scenario, I just like update it in secrets. But this is how the alternative is you have to do the whole full on like sign in, like handle the sign in page and all that. Yeah.
Got it.
I don't know when
And
this cookie expires. I haven't checked the timestamp on it. Yeah, it might expire. Yes.
okay, I have just added your contact details, that is your LinkedIn profile and Twitter, in the chat, so folks can reach out to you in case of any questions. And I'll just quickly add the survey URL as well.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Natraj.
Thank you.